You want me to what now? Captain Alex Rodriguez stared at the holographic projection of the Galactic Council representative, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. We require human intervention in a delicate situation, the Nexthal diplomat repeated, their phosphorescent tentacles rippling in what Alex had learned to recognize as extreme discomfort. There is a Class II civilization that has developed what they believe to be a perfectly peaceful first contact protocol. They plan to implement it next week. Alex set down her coffee with deliberate care. And why exactly do you need a human for this? Last I checked, we were still the galaxy's favorite example of primitive deathworlders who somehow didn't kill themselves before reaching space. The Nexthal's tentacles twisted into the alien equivalent of a grimace. That is precisely why we need you. The Zekatari's peaceful protocol involves releasing their equivalent of butterflies carrying welcome messages. That doesn't sound so bad. The butterflies are the size of your Earth elephants and secrete a highly corrosive enzyme they use for digestion. Alex pinched the bridge of her nose. Let me guess, they think bigger is better when it comes to first impressions? They believe that larger creatures inherently demonstrate greater technological advancement and peaceful intentions. Their own evolutionary history lacks any significant predators. Of course it does, Alex muttered. She glanced at her first officer, Lieutenant Marcus Wong, who was trying, and failing, to maintain a straight face. And you want us to… what? Go explain that unleashing building-sized acid-spewing butterflies might not send the right message? Precisely. We would handle this ourselves, but… The diplomat's tentacles curled inward. The Zekatari are somewhat enthusiastic about their artwork. Their artwork? They express emotion through high-frequency sonic vibrations. What they consider a gentle greeting causes severe neurological disruption in most species. Humans, however, with your remarkably robust nervous systems. Let me get this straight, Alex interrupted. You want us to go talk to a species that accidentally weaponized interpretive dance because we're the only ones who won't have our brains liquefied by their version of hello? That is a crude but accurate assessment. Marcus finally lost his battle with composure, snorting coffee through his nose. Alex shot him a look that promised future revenge via scheduling assignments. Fine, she sighed. But I want it on record that this is exactly why humans should have been included in first contact protocols from the beginning. We're really good at pointing out when something might accidentally kill everyone. The diplomat's tentacles brightened. Excellent. We will transmit the coordinates shortly. And Captain Rodriguez? Please try to be diplomatic about their artistic expressions. The last time someone criticized their performance, they attempted to improve it by adding what they called bass drops. The bass drops melted people's bones, didn't they? 3 square kilometers of ceremonial gardens are still quarantined. Alex took a long drink of coffee. Right, no music criticism. Got it. Rodriguez out. So we're going to stop giant acid butterflies from dissolving the next species to achieve spaceflight while dodging lethal dance moves? Pretty much. Alex stood, straightening her uniform. Alert the crew. And Marcus? Yes, Captain. Break out the industrial-strength earplugs. Something tells me this is going to be one of those missions. The journey to the Zekatari homeworld took 3 days in hyperspace, during which Alex's crew prepared for every conceivable scenario involving acid-secreting megafauna and sonic warfare. The ship's engineers developed makeshift acid-resistant shields, while the science team analyzed everything known about Zekatari biology and culture. Their entire civilization developed without understanding the concept of predation. Dr. Patel, the ship's xenobiologist, explained during the mission briefing. They evolved from something similar to Earth's sea cucumbers, basically living filtration systems that got more complex over time. So they literally don't understand that other species might find giant corrosive butterflies threatening? Alex asked. They understand the concept of harm in abstract terms, but they have no instinctive fear response. Everything in their evolution was about cooperation and filtering nutrients. Even their technology developed along those lines. Their first machines were basically giant communal filtering systems. Space hippie sea cucumbers, Marcus summarized. With acid butterflies. That's not entirely inaccurate, Dr. Patel admitted. When they finally arrived, the Zekatari homeworld looked like something out of a fever dream. Massive organic structures that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm dotted the landscape, connected by what appeared to be rainbow-colored arteries of flowing material. Those are their transportation tubes, Dr. Patel explained as they descended in the shuttle. The colors are different nutrient streams their bodies can filter for sustenance while traveling. They turned their entire planet into a giant juice bar, Marcus observed. That's either brilliant or terrifying. The Zekatari greeting committee was waiting at the designated landing zone, a group of what looked like elegant, translucent columns with multiple feeding arrays that rippled in complex patterns. Their bodies pulsed with internal bioluminescence, creating what might have been beautiful patterns if they weren't also emitting vibrations that made Alex's teeth itch. "Remember," she muttered to her team as they prepared to disembark, "no matter what happens, act like everything is completely normal. We are not here to judge their interpretive dance or their butterfly obsession." The moment they stepped out, the Zekatari began what Alex could only assume was their welcome ceremony. The vibrations intensified, and patterns of light danced through their bodies in synchronized waves. Despite the industrial-grade earplugs and neural dampeners, Alex felt like her bones were trying to reorganize themselves. Marcus leaned close to whisper, "Is it just me, or does this feel like being inside a subwoofer at a rave run by jellyfish?" "Focus!" Alex hissed back, maintaining what she hoped was a diplomatic smile as she stepped forward to address the Zekatari leader, identified by its more elaborate light patterns. The ship's name had been chosen specifically for missions like this. "We come with a message from the Galactic Council regarding your upcoming First Contact initiatives." The Zekatari leader's response came through the translator in waves of enthusiastic modulation. "Welcome, fascinating bilateral beings. We are overjoyed to share our cultural exchange protocols with new friends. Would you like to experience our traditional greeting dance of eternal harmony?" Behind her, Marcus made a small choking sound. "Perhaps later," Alex said smoothly. "First, we would love to learn more about your plans for introducing yourselves to new civilizations. We understand you have developed quite an innovative approach." The Zekatari's lights pulsed with pride. "Yes, we have engineered the perfect ambassadors of peace. Would you like to meet them?" Before Alex could formulate a diplomatic way to say absolutely not, a massive shadow passed overhead. The team looked up to see what appeared to be a constellation of giant iridescent wings blocking out the sun. Drops of something sizzled where they hit the ground. "Oh shit," Marcus breathed. "Behold," the Zekatari leader's translator practically sang, "our messages of friendship. Each one carries enough neural harmonics to share our cultural heritage for several planetary rotations." "Several rotations?" Dr. Patel whispered. That much sustained sonic exposure would turn most species' brains into soup. Alex took a deep breath. "Honored Zekatari," she began carefully. "Your creativity and dedication to peaceful contact is admirable. However, there are some small details we should discuss about interspecies differences in appreciation methods." "You wish to suggest improvements?" The Zekatari's lights flickered in what might have been excitement. "Perhaps we should increase the size of the messengers, or enhance their harmonic output?" "Actually," Alex said quickly, "we were thinking more along the lines of scaling down. You see, many species might find smaller messengers more accessible." The Zekatari rippled in confusion. "Smaller? But how will they properly experience the full spectrum of our friendship harmonics? The enzyme dispersal alone requires significant mass to achieve optimal coverage." Marcus muttered something that sounded suspiciously like death by friendship. Alex shot him another look before continuing. "Let me explain something about different species' perspectives. You see, on my world, we have a saying, 'Good things come in small packages.'" What followed was perhaps the most surreal diplomatic negotiation in human history. Alex found herself having to explain concepts like personal space and acid-free greetings to beings who had never considered that dissolving someone's outer layers might not be taken as a sign of affection. But how will they access our nutritional sharing protocols without enzymatic breakdown? One particularly confused Zekatari asked. "Most species prefer to keep their molecular structure intact during first meetings," Alex explained patiently. "Think of it like a graduated filtration system. You start with small particles and work your way up." The Zekatari brightened at the familiar concept. "Ah, a staged nutrient exchange. Yes, this makes much sense. But what about the harmonic resonance sharing?" "We could potentially develop a system of graduated frequencies," Dr. Patel suggested. "Something that allows other species to acclimate to your natural communication methods without experiencing structural reorganization." The negotiations continued for hours, with the humans trying to find diplomatic ways to say, Please don't accidentally dissolve or sonically liquefy anyone. While the Zekatari struggled to understand why anyone wouldn't want to be broken down to their component nutrients and reassembled through the power of friendship. Finally, they reached a compromise. The Zekatari would develop smaller, non-corrosive messenger drones that could project scaled-down versions of their harmonic communications. The giant acid butterflies would be kept as a purely domestic cultural expression. As they prepared to leave, the Zekatari leader had one final question. We are curious. Why did the Council send humans for this discussion? Surely there were more advanced species available. Alex smiled. Sometimes you need someone who understands what it's like to accidentally terrify everyone else in the galaxy. Humans have a lot of experience being the scary ones. Scary? The Zekatari's lights pulsed in confusion. But you are so small and solid. How could you be scary? Marcus coughed something that sounded suspiciously like, "Ask the Council about our first contact protocols." Back on the ship, as they watched the Zekatari world shrink behind them, Marcus turned to Alex. You know what the funniest part is? In trying to create the perfect, peaceful first contact, they accidentally designed one of the most effective weapons systems I've ever seen. Giant, acid-spewing butterflies that emit brain-liquefying sound waves? That's terrifying. Let's not mention that observation to them, Alex said. The last thing we need is for them to start wondering about military applications. Can you imagine if they decided to weaponize their public transportation system? Rainbow death tubes, Marcus nodded sagely. Actually, that would make a great name for a band. Speaking of which, Alex added, you're on duty roster management for the next month for that space hippie sea cucumber comment. Worth it, Marcus grinned. Besides, someone had to say it. Dr. Patel joined them on the bridge, still reviewing data from their visit. You know, there's something almost poetic about it. They were so focused on being peaceful that they accidentally created something apocalyptic. It's like a reverse of human history. We were so worried about surviving that we accidentally became really good at not dying. The galaxy's a weird place, Alex agreed. One species' death butterfly is another species' friendship ambassador. Should we tell them about how humans traditionally express friendship? Marcus asked innocently. You know, with small doses of neurotoxins we deliberately consume for pleasure. Alex considered this. Let's save the concept of recreational caffeine for their second cultural exchange. One potentially civilization-ending revelation at a time. As the improbable diplomacy jumped to hyperspace, Alex couldn't help but reflect on the strange turns her career had taken. When she'd joined the Space Force, she'd expected exploration, maybe some trading, possibly even some light defending of Earth's interests. Instead, here she was, preventing accidental xenocide by explaining to filter-feeding aliens why dissolving your neighbors might be considered rude. You know what the real irony is? She said finally. The Council keeps calling us primitive deathworlders, but we're the ones they call when someone needs a crash course in not accidentally killing everyone. Maybe that's exactly why, Dr. Patel suggested. Who better to explain the concept of accidentally terrifying than the species that perfected it? To the accidental diplomats, Marcus raised his coffee mug. May we continue to save the galaxy from death by friendship. To the diplomats, Alex agreed, raising her own mug. And to the Zekatari, may their butterflies stay home, and their base drops stay manageable. As they sailed through hyperspace, Alex made a mental note to update the ship's mission logs with a new category. Prevented accidental xenocide through interpretive dance. Something told her it wouldn't be the last time. Captain, we have an incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council, Marcus announced, his expression suggesting he was already anticipating trouble. Alex looked up from her third cup of coffee of the shift. It had been 2 months since their diplomatic intervention with the Zekatari, and she'd been hoping for some routine missions for a change. Let me guess, someone else has invented accidentally lethal friendship? Actually, Marcus paused as he read the incoming message, his eyebrows climbing steadily higher. Remember how we convinced the Zekatari to keep their acid butterflies as a domestic cultural expression? Please don't tell me. It seems they've become something of a cultural sensation. Apparently some footage of their domestic cultural expressions leaked to the galactic social networks. Alex closed her eyes and counted to 10. How bad is it? Several species have declared the acid butterflies adorable and are demanding to know more about Earth's clearly superior understanding of aesthetic biological engineering. They seem to think we helped design them. But we specifically told them, the Zekatari have been proudly explaining how humans helped them perfect their friendship expressions. There are now at least 12 species trying to create their own versions of harmonious biological messengers. Dr. Patel chose that moment to burst onto the bridge, tablet in hand. Captain, you need to see this. The Vexlith have engineered what they're calling friendship spores, based on the Zakatari concept. They're basically mobile fungal colonies that sing. Let me get this straight, Alex said slowly. We prevented one species from accidentally terrorizing the galaxy with deadly butterflies, and now everyone wants their own potentially lethal pet project? The Mextari are particularly enthusiastic, Marcus added, scrolling through updates. They've developed something they're calling joy jellies. Apparently they float through the air dispersing. Actually, I don't want to know what they're dispersing. The Council wants us to handle this, don't they? They said, and I quote, "Since humans appear to have special insight into managing accidentally apocalyptic displays of friendship, we request your immediate intervention." Alex took a long drink of coffee. Plot a course to the nearest potential disaster. And someone please tell me we still have those industrial-strength earplugs. Their first stop was the Vexlith homeworld, where the floating fungal colonies had already developed a complex harmonic language that was causing local wildlife to dance themselves to exhaustion. The spores, it turned out, produced a psychoactive compound that made everything seem incredibly meaningful and worthy of interpretive dance. It's like someone combined a rave with a biology experiment, Marcus observed as they watched a group of native hexapedal creatures performing what appeared to be an improvised ballet. At least these ones aren't corrosive, Alex noted optimistically. No, but according to these readings, they're highly hallucinogenic, Dr. Patel reported, and they reproduce exponentially when exposed to certain sound frequencies. Such as? The exact frequency of most species' panic responses. Of course they do. Alex pinched the bridge of her nose. Because why wouldn't a friendship spore multiply in response to screaming? The Vexlith scientists were incredibly proud of their creation. "We have achieved perfect harmony between biology and music," their lead researcher exclaimed. "Soon the whole galaxy will share in our euphoric synchronicity." About that, Alex began diplomatically. "While your achievement is impressive, have you considered that some species might prefer their consciousness unaltered during first meetings? But how else will they achieve the proper state of universal understanding? Through conventional conversation?" The concept of talking without psychedelic spores seemed to genuinely baffle the Vexlith. It took 3 days of careful negotiation to convince them that maybe, just maybe, they should test their friendship spores on willing participants only. Next came the Mextari and their joy jellies, which turned out to be exactly as concerning as the name suggested. The floating bioluminescent creatures released a compound that caused overwhelming feelings of euphoria and temporary paralysis. "They just want to hug everyone," the Mextari representative explained enthusiastically. "Through chemical immobilization," Marcus added under his breath. "Perhaps," Alex suggested carefully, "we could work on developing a version that asks for consent before inducing forced happiness." The pattern continued across 6 systems. Every species they visited had taken the Zakatari's basic concept, overwhelming displays of friendship through biological means, and put their own unique and terrifying spin on it. The Archathal had developed what they called harmony hornets, which injected recipients with a compound that caused them to break into spontaneous poetry. The XV had created microscopic peace parasites that attempted to network nervous systems together for maximum empathy. "You know what the real problem is?" Dr. Patel mused during their 7th intervention. "None of these species evolved with natural predators. They never developed the concept of too much of a good thing might kill you. Have you considered that maybe forcing people to experience chemically induced enlightenment might be a bit much for a first date?" Marcus added. Their final stop was a return visit to the Zakatari, who had been watching all of this with growing excitement. Their original acid butterflies had been successfully contained to their home system, but now they were fielding constant requests for cultural exchanges. "We are overwhelmed with joy at the harmonious response," the Zakatari leader's translator bubbled. "So many species wish to experience our friendship protocols." "Yes, about that," Alex began carefully. "We need to discuss the concept of cultural context." What followed was perhaps the most surreal series of diplomatic conferences in galactic history. Representatives from 24 species gathered to discuss what Alex's report would later term appropriate boundaries and biochemical expressions of friendship. The humans found themselves in the bizarre position of teaching a masterclass in why you shouldn't accidentally drug, dissolve, or synchronize the consciousness of your new friends. Think of it like a filter system. Alex explained to the assembled delegates, using terms they could understand. You start with small particles, simple greetings, cultural exchange through conversation. Then, only if both parties agree, you can move on to larger particles. But how will we achieve immediate harmonic resonance? Someone asked from the back. Sometimes harmony takes time, Alex replied. That's what makes it meaningful. To everyone's surprise, it was the Zikatari who finally helped bridge the understanding gap. We have learned, their representative explained, that just as nutrients must be properly filtered, friendship must be properly processed. Too much too quickly can cause system shock. Did they just use their own biological filtering process as a metaphor for cultural sensitivity? Marcus whispered. I think they did, Alex whispered back. I'm so proud. The conference concluded with the establishment of what became known as the Friendship Protocols, a set of guidelines for first contact that emphasized consent, gradual cultural exchange, and a strict no involuntary biochemical bonding policy. The various species agreed to keep their more exotic friendship expressions for willing participants only. Back on the improbable diplomacy, Alex reviewed their mission logs. You know what's funny? In trying to prevent one species from accidentally terrorizing the galaxy, we ended up having to teach basic consent to a dozen species. And now we're apparently the galaxy's experts on friendship safety, Marcus added, which is ironic, considering Earth's history. Maybe that's exactly why we're good at it, Dr. Patel suggested. We learned the hard way about boundaries and consent. Most of these species never had to develop those concepts because they never evolved with conflict. So, once again, being deathworlders makes us uniquely qualified to help, Alex mused. Because we understand both the desire to make friends and all the ways it can go horribly wrong. To the power of friendship, Marcus raised his coffee mug, now with proper safety protocols. And to the Zikatari, Alex added, raising her own mug, who taught the galaxy that sometimes the best way to make friends is to not dissolve them. As they set course for their next mission, Alex couldn't help but smile. Somewhere out there, giant acid butterflies were still dancing in their home system. Friendship spores were forming consensual psychedelic bonds, and joy jellies were asking politely before inducing chemical euphoria. The galaxy was still weird, but at least now it was weird with guidelines. She made one final entry in her captain's log. Reminder: check all future diplomatic gifts for unexpected biochemical properties. Just because it looks like a friendship bracelet doesn't mean it won't try to synchronize your consciousness with the local hive mind. You've got to be kidding me. Alex stared at the report on her screen, coffee forgotten. They did what? Marcus was trying very hard to maintain his professional composure, but the corners of his mouth kept twitching. It seems that after our successful establishment of the friendship protocols, several species decided to study human culture more closely to better understand our superior diplomatic insights. And they may have slightly misinterpreted some of our cultural practices, specifically our entertainment media. Dr. Patel burst into the bridge, tablet clutched to her chest. Captain, have you seen? I'm seeing it now. Alex held up a hand. Please tell me this isn't as bad as it looks. The Vexlith have created what they're calling action movie spores, Dr. Patel reported, unable to keep the fascination out of her voice. They're designed to release compounds that trigger an adrenaline-like response while projecting holographic explosions. The Mextari joy jellies have evolved, Marcus added, scrolling through updates. They now include what they're calling dramatic plot twists in their chemical cocktails. Apparently, they studied human soap operas and decided that emotional revelation was a crucial part of our social bonding. Alex closed her eyes. Please tell me the Zikatari haven't. They've engineered a new variant of their butterflies based on human romantic comedies. Dr. Patel cut in. These ones secrete pheromones that create what they call amusing misunderstandings. Right. Alex stood up, straightening her uniform. New mission, everyone. We need to explain the concept of fiction to a bunch of species who think Michael Bay movies are documentaries. Their first stop was a Vexlith colony world, where the action movie spores had triggered what local authorities were calling a minor incident, involving 3 stolen spacecraft, a high-speed chase through an asteroid field, and what appeared to be spontaneously choreographed martial arts battles. We simply wished to recreate the traditional human bonding ritual of buddy cop dynamics, the Vexlith scientist explained proudly as they watched 2 colonists dramatically diving away from an explosion in slow motion. Those aren't actually, Alex began, then had to duck as another explosion went off. Could we maybe discuss this somewhere less combustible? The Mextari situation proved even more complicated. Their enhanced joy jellies were now creating elaborate interpersonal dramas wherever they went. Entire space stations had been transformed into living soap operas, complete with evil twins, amnesia, and improbable love triangles. Yesterday, our chief engineer discovered he was secretly his own grandfather, one station administrator reported dreamily. The emotional resonance was extraordinary. That's not how genetics... Dr. Patel started, then caught Alex's warning look. Never mind. But it was the Zikatari romantic comedy butterflies that really took the cake. They had somehow engineered their creatures to create situations straight out of every rom-com cliché. Forced proximity due to environmental factors, mistaken identities, and what they called meet-cute enzymatic reactions. We have successfully recreated the human mating ritual, where two individuals who initially despise each other are forced to work together and gradually develop romantic attachments. The Zikatari researcher announced proudly. The butterflies ensure optimal levels of witty banter and situational comedy. Through mind-altering chemicals, Marcus clarified. Of course. How else would you ensure the timing of the dramatic resolution? It took 3 weeks of careful diplomatic negotiations and what felt like hundreds of presentations on the difference between entertainment and reality before they finally got the situation under control. The hardest part was explaining that humans actually enjoyed fiction precisely because it wasn't real. You mean you deliberately consume narratives that do not accurately represent reality? The Vexlith cultural attaché asked, seemingly scandalized. For pleasure? It's called entertainment, Alex explained for what felt like the 1000th time. We enjoy stories that are exciting or dramatic specifically because they're different from our everyday lives. But your historical documents clearly show humans regularly engaging in explosive confrontations and improbable romantic scenarios, a Mextari representative protested. Those weren't historical documents, Marcus sighed. Those were movies. They're made-up stories with special effects. Special effects? The gathered aliens looked collectively baffled. What followed was an impromptu seminar on human entertainment media, complete with behind-the-scenes footage showing how movies were made. The revelation that humans deliberately created false scenarios for entertainment purposes seemed to rock the entire galactic community to its core. You mean the building-sized creatures attacking your cities were not real? One particularly disappointed Zikatari asked. No, Godzilla is not real, Alex confirmed. Neither is Speed, or The Notebook, or any of the Fast and Furious movies. Though that last one really pushes the boundaries of physics even for fiction, Marcus muttered. The final resolution came in the form of a new addition to the Friendship Protocols, the Entertainment Media Guidelines. These carefully explained the concept of fiction and strongly discouraged attempts to recreate human media tropes through biochemical means. Back on the improbable diplomacy, Alex reviewed the final reports. You know what's really ironic about all this? We spent all that time teaching them about consent and proper first contact protocols. And then they turned around and tried to recreate our entertainment media because they thought it would help them understand us better. In a way, they weren't entirely wrong, Dr. Patel mused. Our stories do say a lot about us as a species. They just took everything a bit too literally. Still, Marcus added, you have to admire their commitment. They essentially tried to engineer real-life special effects because they wanted to better relate to humans. Speaking of which, Alex looked up from her tablet. Has anyone heard back from that Archaethol colony that was experimenting with what they called sitcom symbiotes? Last I heard, they're still trying to resolve a particularly complex misunderstanding involving 3 couples, a misplaced quantum communication device, and what they described as hilarious consequences, Dr. Patel reported. Should we intervene? They assured me they're following all the new guidelines. Apparently they're treating it as a sort of performance art piece now, with clearly posted warnings about potential exposure to comedic situations. Alex nodded thoughtfully. Well, I suppose that's progress. At least now everyone's clear on the fact that not everything humans do is meant to be literally recreated with bioengineered life forms. Though you have to admit, Marcus grinned, the Zikatari's rom-com butterflies were pretty impressive. They actually managed to engineer a meet-cute into their biochemical makeup. Yes. And we are never speaking of the incident with the trapped elevator and the spontaneous musical number ever again, Alex said firmly. As they set course for their next mission, Alex made one final entry in her captain's log. Note for future human cultural exchange programs. Maybe start with documentaries next time. And for the love of all that's holy, Keep Michael Bay movies away from any species capable of biochemical engineering. The end.